Yes, this summer, the Minions, the yellow little Minions, are back. After 6 movies in the Despicable Me franchise, how can the Illumination production continue to surprise us with this 7th movie? This week, we're going to talk about the newly released Minions and Monsters and dive deep into this exciting, creative filmmaking adventure of the Minions. Stay tuned for more. Hey, come on! The screening is about to begin! This is Cinematic Motif. Hello, I'm Watson, a film critic and a content creator, and welcome back to Cinematic Motif, where I introduce you films in Taiwan and around the world. Alright, so first of all, I am finally back from my French trip, although you might have not noticed that. Okay, so of course, a few weeks ago, I went to the 2026 Annecy Festival of International... No, that's French. Annecy Festival of Animation Films. It's an international festival. Okay, I'm blending together. It makes me confusing. Okay, so I'm blending English and French together. Anyway, it's an international film festival on animation, okay, in Annecy, in France. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about this movie, Minions and Monsters, with you, and it was actually premiered at the Annecy Festival a few weeks ago, at the end of June. Now, this is a 2026 American comedy film directed by Pierre Coffin. He's French, of course, and this is also the 3rd installment in the Minions prequel series and the 7th film overall in the Despicable Me franchise. The story took place in 1927 as this whole film follows the Minions when they're aiming to make a monster movie of their own in old Hollywood. So, as I said, this film was premiered at the Annecy Festival in June 21st, and it was theatrically released worldwide a few days ago and is now viewable in all cinemas everywhere in this world. So today, we're going to talk about this film with you. So let's get started. Okay, so I have to admit, I didn't watch this movie at the Annecy Festival because I tried to get the tickets, but apparently I could not get it. Anyway, I watched it a few days ago when I'm back in Taiwan. So let's start with the storyline a little bit. So this film is set in the 1920s Hollywood, and it follows the autistic minion James and his buddy Henry, who accidentally become silent film stars. And after the talkies movie, in this 1920, at the end of the 1920s, there is a transition from silent movies into talkies, the talkie movies with actual sounds recorded. So it makes them, it put them into a situation of unemployment because apparently the Minions can only, the language of the Minions is just a bunch of nonsense words and stupid words and phrases. Okay, so apparently they could not star in these movies anymore. So James decides to make his own monster movie, and their cinematic ambitions go terribly wrong when they summon a mischievous, cute monster named Goomy, who unleashes real chaos across the city. Okay, so essentially this film talks about the film history itself. Even just from the beginning of this movie, you can actually see this movie begins with the old Universal Studio logos. We have it's kind of like a reverse from the modern Universal logos into all the way back into 100 years ago. You get to see all these different logos, and you go to the good old days, and then you have the black and white logos of the Universal Studio. And then also, this film starts with, I don't know if you know this, Edward Muybridge, he invented something called the horse emotion. this is probably something you have seen in documentaries. A horse starting to move like a motion picture. This is one of the earliest studies on cinema and on moving, pictures moving. So this film wants to talk about minions and monsters, wants to talk about film history, wants to talk about filmmaking in the old days. And then what's really interesting to me, this is very interesting. Minions and monsters put a bunch of minions into old archive movies. For example, the Lumière brothers, the frères Lumière, l'arrivée d'un train en gare de la Ciudad. That is the arrival of the train in the Ciudad station. And then we also seen minions in the old movies like the Sprinkler Sprinkled, L'arroseur arrosé, which is also by Lumière brothers, or even La sortie de l'usine Lumière à Lyon, employees leaving the Lumière factory. These are all very famous shorts by the Lumière brothers in France, and minions in this movie, minions are all in these films. So it's really interesting, right? Staging minions into actual film history. And I think that's what makes this film really, really fascinating, and what makes me as a movie buff and a film history nerd really, really excited about. So as I said, this film talks about the transition from the silent movies into talkies, and there is a soundtrack from this movie that is talking about silent movies. This is also, someone playing the piano along with silent movies, because this is part of film history. You need someone to play the instrument, play out the music live back in the good old days when silent movies were screened in cinema. So let's play this track from the original soundtrack of Minions and Monster, and you can feel a little bit about what silent movies are. And we'll be right back on Cinematic Motif. Silent Movies by John Powell from the Minions and Monsters original soundtrack. You're listening to Cinematic Motif on Radio Taiwan International. So, as I said, today we're talking about the Minions and Monsters. This is a movie that stages Minions into actual film history, the transition from silent movies into talkies. Now, this is actually not the first film doing this thing, because if you have been paying attention to Hollywood's trends in recent years, we even had Babylon just a few years ago by Damien Chazelle, the director of La La Land, talking about this exactly the same period in Hollywood blockbuster. And if you want to dive even deeper into the film history, you even have Singing in the Rain, which is also talking about this transition from silent movies into talkies. So this is not something new, but placing it in an animated feature, this is something refreshing for me. And even seeing these little yellow little creature minions in this actual film history, this is the point. Okay, so I think it's really interesting to make this setting. Minions lose their jobs because they can only say, I'm sorry and pardon for the indecent words. For example, poops. They can only say lasagna. They can only say a bunch of words that means nothing. The words that mean nothing in these lines, in characters as an actor. So they could not be an actor anymore. They're losing their jobs, just like all these characters in Babylon, in Singing in the Rain. So it's really interesting. And in this movie, you also get to see the filming on set of the old Hollywood, how Minions are participated in this history. So, I mean, you can feel that the director, Pierre Coffin, he really loves cinema, and this whole movie, Minions and Monster, is a love letter to the old Hollywood, combining with stupidity of Minions and also some really interesting cinematic jokes, like the jokes that you can only get if you are a film nerd. For example, a George Lucas joke at the very start of the film. I am not sure whether George Lucas gave consent to this joke or not. He was in an exhibition. This is a really, really interesting one. George Lucas, the director of Star Wars. Anyway, so I love this movie Minions and Monsters so much, and let me play you another soundtrack from the movie. It's called Limos, Sound Stages, and Vikings. This is the tracks that was played when the Minions are, they accidentally participated in the filming of a movie, and then they actually step into the industry. So it gives you a sense of what filming in the old Hollywood's like. This is the point of this track from the original soundtrack album of Minions and Monsters, Limos, Sound Stages, and Vikings. We'll be right back on Cinematic Motif. Limos, Soundstages, and Vikings by John Powell from Minions and Monsters movies original soundtrack. You're listening to Cinematic Motif on Radio Taiwan International. Okay, so as I said, today is all dedicated to this Minions and Monsters movie, which is out everywhere in the world this week. This is a really, really special film for me, not just because of the setting of film history, George Lucas' joke, and the love of cinema, Lumière's brothers, the references. It's also because narratively, it's a very interesting film. You know, we always love watching films talking about filmmaking. This story, I don't want to be a spoiler, so I'm going to skip most of the facts in terms of the plots, but till the very end of the movie, you will find out that this is a framed narrative. It's a story within a story within a story. I'm not repeating myself. A story within a story within a story. So it's very interesting to see someone making a film about making a film in this whole movie. And towards the very end of the story, you can actually see the ending credits of the movie itself. But the ending credits, it's all about the filmmakers which are the Minions who made this movie. We talked about Henry, we talked about James. It's just amazing to me to see how the story is told in this sort of a bit complicated structure, and it gives you surprises, and to me, this whole film talks about how minions can be themselves. Minions, they are now independent from their masters, the evil masters that they've been trying to find, or even grew their old master himself. And it's a film talking about making movies, and reminds us the collective joy of watching movies in a cinema, and talks about the magic of silver screen. That's why it's not just a love letter to the old Hollywood, but also a love letter to everyone who loves films. And this is fascinating to me. Meanwhile, this film also gives Minions their own stories, because as I said, there is a framed narrative, a story within a story within a story, right? And the story itself is basically talking about the origin story of these Minions and the Minions tribe. So it's giving that independent status and independent qualification to the Minions tribe, the Minions species. So I feel like Pierre Coffin is really doing a good job this time in treating Minions very well, I would say. So very, very surprised for me to see this movie, and I really love it, and I hope you can all go to the cinemas to appreciate not just the brilliant animation by the Illumination production, but also the love of cinema, the love of silver screen. Alright, so that's all for this week's Cinematic Motif. As always, if you have any requests or feedback, send your email to wanson@rti.org.tw. You can also follow me on Instagram. My handle is @wansonscfe. This has been Cinematic Motif. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Wanson. I'm going to be back next week for more movies. And now, let's play this track from the original album of this movie, Undos and Premieres by John Powell again. I'll see you next week. Until then, bye bye.